from my own Coimbatore.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear the rest of them.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of IAP TNSE for giving me this opportunity to deliver a talk today. And this is a very important topic, non-invasive ventilation in units. Is it a boon? Definitely it's a boon. So coming to the first slide. So introduction, every organ of a premature babies are immature and delicate, which is inversely proportional to the gestational age. So the more the immature, the more the delicate these babies are. And if you want a good outcome in these babies, you have to follow the lung protective strategy. Appropriate strategy at the right time minimizes the complication and improves the neurodevelopmental outcome of these babies. And NIV has got a major role in achieving this target. What is the scenario in India currently? I think these were published only last year in BMJ, the availability and use of CPAP for neonatal care in public health facilities. This was a cross-sectional cluster survey study. They almost approached about 661 government hospitals out of 694, which provided information. Among that, only 68.3% of medical college hospitals and 36.6% of district hospitals use CPAP in units, though everyone were running neonatal units. And the data was collected from a representative sample of 142 hospitals, that is 79 medical college hospitals and 63 district hospitals. Only 50% were using blenders, and only 50% were using humidifiers, and only 50% staff were trained. This is a major lacuna. Probably it requires a lot of improvement. And hopefully now India is giving a lot of importance to the healthcare nowadays, and hopefully everything gets better. This particular slide I wanted to introduce just to give the importance of functional residual capacity. So way back in 1970s, when they started ventilating these babies, premature babies, they found that initially when they started ventilating, the mortality actually went up. And that was because they had not introduced PEEP or CPAP. Once the CPAP was introduced or PEEP was introduced in the ventilator, there is a significant drop in mortality, right from almost up to 60% mortality decrease just by introducing PEEP. So this gives us how important the CPAP is in increasing the functional residual capacity. Now, what are the advances in prevention of RDS and its complication? Several studies have shown that optimizing the lung recruitment is the most important element which is needed during ventilation. It reduces the lung inflammation, improves the surfactant function, and also decreases the lung injury. Failure to achieve this increases all complications, including chronic lung disease, IVH, and ROP. Extreme premature babies are more susceptible to this damage. If you think that a normal breathing is breathing around 40 to 60 per minute, they are distending their lungs more than 50,000 times per day. That means if you're giving a slightly higher volume or a higher pressure for these babies, you're bombarding the lungs with more than 50,000 times per day, and you're going to induce significant damage. So if you want to prevent the lung damage, the best answer is a lot of preventive strategies. And one of the innovations in this direction is non-invasive ventilations, mainly CPAP and HFNC, which of course is a boon. Now, what should be prevented during your respiratory support in preterm babies? So if you're doing a mechanical ventilation, they are subjected to a lot of traumas, like a volutrauma, barotrauma, oxytrauma, atelectotrauma, biotrauma, and rheotrauma. So all these traumas by themselves induces an inflammation. They can produce fluidly, bloodly, and also proteinly, which can induce an inflammation, and that can damage the lungs significantly. So most important traumas are the volutrauma and the barotrauma, which has to be prevented. And oxytrauma is a silent killer. We think that baby is doing well just looking at the oxygen, but if you're giving too much of oxygen, this itself can damage the lungs significantly by a silent technique. And atelectotrauma, never allow the airways to collapse. Once you allow them to collapse, the shearing tears while opening up itself can induce an inflammation. So that's one of the reasons why CPAP has to be used right from the delivery room. If you look here, all these traumas, this is the normal part, the left side of the alveoli. This is the normal alveoli. And this is the one which has been subjected to significant trauma due to various reasons, all these traumas. And you can see that the airway epithelium has been damaged. The type 1 cell is damaged. The cellular debris are there. And the hyaline membrane has been formed. And there is a role of significant inflammation, which will lead on to significant problem in the future ventilation. All these has to be prevented. And NIV again is going to reduce all these traumas if managed properly. That's very, very important. If managed properly, NIV will decrease all this trauma. Here again, if proper management is not done, if you're giving too much of pressures or too much of volume for these babies, that results in abnormal development of the secondary epithelium or secondary septa. So this is the normal secondary septa, but if the lungs are damaged and the alveoli is damaged, that leads on to BPD. So here, this was an interesting study published way back in 1993 by Alan Jobs, who is a pioneer in the respiratory physiology. He took at human infants who died and he did what exactly the alveolar number was there. At 25 weeks of gestation, the approximate alveolar was 1 million. And the same at 40 weeks, these babies had 120 million. So from 1 million to 120 million, just in a space of 15 weeks. So we can imagine most of our preterm babies are delivered around 24, 25, 26 weeks. That is extreme premature babies. And we manage these babies, and the developing alveoli can be significantly damaged if you use excessive traumas. So at 5 months, this doubles from 120 to 250. But if these babies were ventilated for any reason, the number of alveoli is only half of it. So this tells us the importance of preventing damage of the lungs by delicate ventilation or by preventive strategy. So the adult number is 300 to 480 million. And this gives us an important message also, that we have to save all the alveoli. So what's CPAP? It is a continuous positive airway pressure. So here, ventilation with a positive pressure which is maintained throughout respiratory cycle. Simple way to understand this CPAP is just imagine a balloon. If a balloon is collapsed, and when you try to open up the balloon by blowing, initially there is significant resistance because of the excessive surface tension. And once the balloon is opened a little bit, then further opening is made much easier. So the same technique is applied in CPAP. In preterm babies who have got lack of surfactant, who don't have enough strength, they find it extremely difficult to open up a collapsed airway, collapsed alveoli. So if we give a CPAP and try to keep up this airways open slightly, it makes things much easier for these premature babies, and they can easily breathe through. And that's how we are able to manage even 24, 25, 26 weeks with CPAP. And almost 80% of the babies are not requiring any invasive ventilation. We are able to manage just with CPAP. So CPAP forms an important criteria in managing these babies. So how did CPAP get popular? If you look at this study published by Avery et al. In 1987, somehow in US, they found that some NICUs were having lower incidence of chronic lung disease, and some institutions were having higher incidence. So in order to find what was the difference, there was a multi-center comparative study by Avery et al. Who looked at it, and he selected 8 NICUs in US and looked at what was the difference in management. And he found that incidence of BPD was significantly low in Colombia. And then they tried to analyze. It was almost 1/3 or half, less than half of all the other NICUs. When they looked what was the difference in the management, mainly they had a very low threshold for invasive ventilation. Most of the babies were managed just with CPAP, and CPAP of 5 centimeter, and it was bubble CPAP. So they started doing a lot of more researches and definitely found that CPAP made the difference and definitely decreased the incidence of BPD. And that also improved the outcome of these babies also. Now coming to the CPAP proper circuit. So just using CPAP may not be very helpful. You should know the correct way of using CPAP, and you should have a proper nurse, and you should use all the necessary items when delivering CPAP if you want a good result. Especially extreme premature babies, you should have a blender without fail. Blender is very, very important component, and the flow meter is here, and this should be humidified and heated in the humidifier. And this is the inspiratory limb containing a heated wire inside, and this is the interface, and then you have got expiratory limb. Approximately CPAP, as we understand with the physiology, this tubing, this expiratory limb tubing, if it is about 5 centimeter inside the water, that approximately will generate a 5 centimeter of CPAP here. And that's how it works. And Fisher and Paykel has done a lot of researches on this, and there are a lot of advanced mechanism in their circuits, and they have got one of the best outcomes generally. But a lot of other circuits also are available, which may be reasonably good, but we don't have experience with those circuits. And again, here I'll go with the humidification later, which is also a very important aspect. Just to understand, we should know about the absolute humidity and also relative humidity. Probably I've got later some slides which I can explain you. And always use blender for delivering oxygen to newborns. Never give pure oxygen. That is going to be detrimental in outcome for both premature and term babies. If the babies require oxygen, it has to be blended. And already Dr. Balakrishnan told about the easy technique of having a connector. Now coming to use of CPAP. CPAP has to be used right from the delivery room while managing preterm babies. This is very, very important, and this is a new entry in management of premature babies. Generally, as we know, all the alveoli is filled with amniotic fluid. As the amniotic fluid is driven out, if the alveoli has got enough surfactant, it may be kept open. If the alveoli doesn't have surfactant, it will immediately collapse. So if you start giving CPAP right at that time, before the amniotic fluid is driven out, it maintains a positive pressure inside these airways, not allowing to the airways to collapse. This helps in uniform expansion of the airways, and that helps the baby breathe much more easily. And also you can prevent damage, because if you allow it to collapse, again, when you try to open, it can cause shearing, tears, and cause a lot of inflammation. So CPAP during resuscitation decreases the rate of intubation, decreases the duration of mechanical ventilation, and also decreases the requirement of surfactant, and reduces the death and BPD without significant increase in air leak or severe IVH. Spontaneously breathing preterm infants with RDS should be supported by CPAP initially, rather than routine intubation for administration of positive pressure ventilation. This is the study. There were two significant meta-analyses, and one was done by Smolzer et al. He picked up 4 large RCT trials, and the other one was done by Fisher and Borer, who looked at 7 smaller trials. Both had a similar result. Both of them favored using early CPAP rather than intubating and giving surfactant. This tells us the importance of CPAP in delivery room. Now here, this is another study why we should not be using bag and mask or IPP ventilation in these babies. This is an animal study, but gives an important information for us. I'll just briefly inform what exactly it was. They started giving positive pressure ventilation for these lambs. They were the premature lambs delivered around 127 to 128 days, whereas term was 145 days. And these siblings, there are 5 pairs of lamb siblings. One in each pair was given 6 manual breath at 35 to 40 ml per kilo by bagging. The other group was directly intubated and given a dose of surfactant, but surfactant was given for both groups at around 30 minutes of each. So then they looked at blood gases and deflation PV curve, pressure volume curves, which was recorded. PV curves were much steeper in control group, which did not receive bag and mask ventilation. And at 4 hours, even the inspiratory capacity and maximal deflation compliance was almost 3 times higher in control group, whereas in the bagged lung, there was significant difficulty in ventilating, and there was a widespread lung injury in the histologic section. The next slides give very important information in that. So here, if you look at, this is the control limbs who are not bagged. So after giving surfactant, there was a significant improvement in the deflation PV curve. Whereas in the bagged lambs, which were given bags, because it had induced significant inflammation, the response to surfactant was not seen that adequate. This also gives us important information for us that premature babies should not be bagged unless it is required. So you have to go, we know that newborns or fetuses have been saturating only around 50 to 70 in utero saturations, and we should not be targeting above 90% soon after birth. Take it up more slowly so that you can avoid inspiratory ventilation for these babies. CPAP indication in NICU. A spontaneously breathing preterm infants with respiratory distress, mainly RDS, then CPAP has to be used. CPAP increases the functional residual capacity. All of us know what is functional residual capacity. It is the residual volume plus expiratory reserve volume. So CPAP increases this functional residual capacity and makes things much easier for these babies. This decreases the work of breathing for the neonates through facilitated diffusion, decrease the use of surfactant, reduce the likelihood of mechanical ventilation, reduces ventilation, and also reduces chronic lung disease. All of these have got a high quality evidence. This is another preterm rabbit study, which tells us again the importance of CPAP or PEEP during ventilation. These rabbits again were delivered premature, and these babies were anesthetized, ventilated, and connected to they were kept in a plethysmography, fluid-filled plethysmography, and then they were ventilated. So they were ventilated with a pressure of around 35. One group did not have PEEP in their ventilation. The other group had a PEEP in their ventilation. You can see the significant changes. Where there was no PEEP, during inspiration, you can see some amount of air. Mainly in the airways, distal airways about minimal amount of air, and during expiration is totally collapsed. On the other hand, when there was a PEEP introduced, with each breath, the amount of air going to the distal airway significantly improved. And this image was taken after only 20 breaths. And this shows us the importance of CPAP or PEEP in managing small babies. So again, what is the importance of CPAP in Ensure? So generally we just, babies who are on CPAP, if the oxygen requirement goes beyond our allowed, mainly more than 30%, then we try to give surfactant. So intubate, surfactant, and extubate. Here, I would suggest one important strategy to prevent lung damage. Once you administer the surfactant, don't extubate the babies immediately. Connect it to a neopath CPAP. Wait for about few minutes till the baby improves. That will give a constant pressure, CPAP pressure, so that all the surfactant moves in, and also no need of positive pressure ventilation soon after giving surfactant, unless the baby goes down with saturation to less than 70 or 60 or the heart rate drops. So IPPV post surfactant unless required. This strategy, because soon after surfactant, the compliance of the lung is going to improve significantly. And if you start giving a pressure of 20 or 25, that may induce significant inflammation in these delicate lungs. So I am able to manage almost 80% of babies just by CPAP without giving positive pressure ventilation. Advantages of CPAP in newborns, especially in preterm babies. It helps the clearing the lung fluid at birth, helps establish and maintain the lung aeration, improves oxygenation, conserves surfactant, decreases upper and lower airway resistance, improves the compliance of stiff lungs, regularizes and slows down the respiratory rate, reduces apnea, reduces lung injury, reduces energy expenditure, helping in weight gain, and reduces the need for ventilation. So there are a lot of controversy whether bubble CPAP is better or consistent pressure CPAP is better. There are different CPAPs available in the market, but now in India itself, more than 80% of them are using only bubble CPAP. And of course, most of the studies are favoring bubble CPAP. This is one of those studies, preterm LAMP study, which was published in 2008. These preterm LAMPs again were subjected to CPAP. One group was subjected to about 12 lamps were subjected to bubble CPAP, 12 lamps were subjected to consistent pressure CPAP, and another 10 lamps were subjected to again bubble CPAP with a higher flow. In these two groups, there were about 8 liters of flow, whereas the other group got about 12 liters of flow. After 3 hours of ventilation, they did an ABG and saw the outcome. Bubble CPAP significantly had a better result with the oxygen, had a better result with washing out CO2, this side, and had a better result with improved pH. So in all three, bubble CPAP had an upper hand. And there was no difference between an 8 liter and 12 liter bubble CPAP. So flow doesn't have any meaning. As long as there is a good bubbling, the flow either decreasing or increasing the flow is not going to be helpful. Problems with CPAP. So this requires a skilled nursing care. It's not as easy as we think. Definitely it requires a skilled nursing care. The hats and chin straps makes it uncomfortable for the babies. Chin straps nowadays are not used routinely. It has to be, the prongs has to be a tight fit in the nostril so that we deliver the proper CPAP, makes baby's nose sore most often, dilates the nostril over time, make it dysmorphic, and sometimes there can be condensation in the tubes because of the improper humidification. All these problems can be prevented with a good nursing care and good education. So these are some of the common complications we see in CPAP. So this is the worst complication which you can have with CPAP, because once the septum is damaged, it's not going to heal completely. There will be some dysmorphism, and I often tease our nurses that if they cause damage to the septum, if it is a female baby, then they have to pay a dowry of 1 to 2 crores to get married. So that's one of the reasons why we have to take care of the septum. Luckily, in our unit, we don't face this problem because of the excellent nursing care. And these are the other complications you can see. This often because the interface, we get this mark here, which is called as a stamping of any NICU. Generally, it takes about few months before it disappears, may not disappear also. To minimize damage to the septum, we tried in our unit a lot of methods to minimize, so that because of the weight of these tubings, most of the tubing goes back and then it hits the septum here. And we had tough time. The biomedical people tried a lot of ways, they couldn't organize. But one fine morning when I went, one nurse had kept this, a glove filled with water. I asked her, what is this, sir? Because the tubing is going frequently down, I had to start this, and now it is stable. This was a good innovation. So I started inducing in my unit, and after this, we had a significantly lower problem with CPAP inducing any inflammation in the septum. So this technique was a novel strategy which was discovered by one of our staff members way back. Now coming on to the next, high flow nasal cannula treatment. So it's almost similar to CPAP with few changes. Again, the gas has to be blended. The optimal flow has to be fixed, generally around 6 to 8 liters. And then it has to be humidified, it has to be heated, and it has to go to the baby in this system. So there are few differences which we'll discuss later. So how HFNC is generally given? It has got a small thin cannula. The most important criteria, this cannula should be less than 50% of the diameter of the nostril. Otherwise, you may cause significant damage to the lungs. So this is very, very important criteria. The prong should be less than 50% of the size of the nostril, and you deliver only the blended oxygen air, anywhere between 2 to 8 liters. It must be heated and humidified. And this high flow nasal cannula is going to deliver some CPAP, but it will be variable. And the pressure of CPAP pressure, which is raised by this HFNC, depends on the size of the baby, prongs, flow, breathing pattern, and nasal secretion. Why we have to be careful is, Chang et al. In his study on animal, he found that if these prongs are tight fitted and you give any rates between 1 to 8 liters per minute, at 8 liters per minute, the pressure generated could be as high as 120 centimeters of water, which can blow open the lungs completely. So that's why we have to be very careful. Whenever you're inserting HFNC, the prong size should be small and chin strapping should not be done. Mouth should be left open. What is the mechanism of HFNC? So one thing is HFNC also gives a variable CPAP. It helps by itself. And the other thing is it reduces the dead space. Normally when a baby breathes, it takes an inspiration. The air with high oxygen content and a lower CO2 content goes in. Because the gases exchange, during expiration, there is a lower oxygen content and a higher CO2 content. And some of the air is staying back in the as a dead space. So what this high flow nasal cannula does is, when you are giving forced air, this air washes out all the dead space in the upper part of the oropharynx. So when the baby takes the next breath, the air with higher oxygen content and lower CO2 content goes back again, rather than high CO2 and low oxygen. In this way, this helps in significant washout of CO2 and also improving the oxygenation. So here, this picture, just to put, this should not be used. A nasal prong should not be connected directly from the central air, because this is very cold air and this is 100% oxygen, which can be damaging to the preterm babies. So never use a pure oxygen from the central connection with a nasal prong, but that will be damaging the lungs significantly in a premature baby. So to convey that message, why it is important. So here was a very excellent study, one of my favorite slides. Neil Feiner, way back in 1996, he did this study. A lot of his babies had chronic lung disease, they were on low flow oxygen. Out of interest, he wanted to find out what percentage of oxygen these babies were getting. So he picked almost 18 babies less than 1,500 grams, and about 13 babies more than 1,500 grams. And he started giving oxygen at a flow rate of 25 ml per minute and increment up to 50, 75, 100. So there was an increment of 25 ml, and each time he took samples from the pharynx, oropharynx, just to see what the percentage of oxygen was going to the baby. Even at 200 ml per minute, that is 0.2 liter per minute, a preterm baby less than 1,500 grams was getting almost 80% oxygen. This is significantly high oxygen. Imagine if you're giving 0.5 liter, it will be definitely 100%. So even for a baby, much larger baby, more than 1,500 grams, at 200 ml, it was giving almost 50% oxygen. So that's why we have to be very careful when we give low flow oxygen. And if you look at this, this was again published by Neil Feiner in a 1 kilo baby with lot of variables. That is a baby breathing at around 40, a gas flow at 300 ml per minute with an oxygen of 100%, gave 100% inspired oxygen to this baby when he used low flow oxygen. And even for a term baby, 3 kilos, when the baby was breathing around 40 per minute and the baby was getting approximately 1 liter per minute, the baby was getting 100% oxygen. So we have to think twice whenever we're using directly 100% oxygen in a low flow. We think that it's not going to cause damage when it is 1 liter, 2 liter, or 3 liter. But of course, once you cross 200 or 300 ml, you are going to induce significant damage. And even term babies, when you cross 1 liter, you may be inducing significant oxytrauma. So clinical studies and research have shown that
Dr. Thiruneni here, sir. Sorry, sir, 2 more minutes, sir.
HFNC may have a similar efficacy on nasal CPAP. HFNC may reduce intubation rates and shorten the length of stay, reduces the rates of nasal trauma. This is a definite advantage with the HFNC. Definitely it reduces the nasal trauma. It's more comfortable for the parents, more comfortable for the baby, more comfortable for the nurses also. And there are no difference in other complications, except that all the recent studies have shown that early use of HFNC is not that good. Probably babies has to be started off with CPAP, stabilize, and then subsequently to wean off, we can go to HFNC. And this is another high flow nasal therapy. I'm not going to the details of this. This is a vapor-therm precision flow. The major advantage is digitalized. Everything can be digitalized and fixed. Flow rate can be fixed, temperature can be traced, and FiO2 can be fixed. And it's also humidified by a latest technology. There is no condensation in this method. This can be used right from newborn to the adults. So HFNC is very different from nasal CPAP. HFNC has got only one tubing. CPAP has got 2 tubings. All the gas flowing into the circuit goes into the baby's nose. That's why leak is very important. Gas flowing through the inspiratory tube goes out through the expiratory tubing. Only the CPAP pressure drives the tubing, the oxygen inside the baby's nostril. And leak is a must when you're doing HFNC, and in CPAP, minimal leak is advised for better CPAP control. So again, just to understand what you have to do while using HFNC, this study, though it was a small study, gives us useful information how you can increase your oxygenation, how you can increase your carbon dioxide excretion. This study will give us some idea. That's why I'm putting this slide. I'll just brief you about it. This was again an animal study. Piglet lungs were used. Neonatal piglets whose lungs were injured with IV oleic acid was supported with 3 types of NIV at 2 to 8 liters per minute. So one was subjected to CPAP. All piglets were subjected to all 3 types in rotation, and they found what the difference was. One was CPAP at 5 centimeters of water with minimal leak, single prong HFNC with a high leak, and double prong HFNC with a low leak. All the measurement of hemodynamics, respiratory, and blood gas parameters were assessed. There were no significant changes in these hemodynamic parameters. Each group was subjected to incremental increase and decrease in flow rate, and tracheal pressures were recorded by transmural catheters. So here, what are the tracheal pressures recorded? In the CPAP group, as the flow increased, the pressure started going up. So this was directly proportional to the amount of flow. Similarly, in the high flow piglets also, as the flow was increased, the pressure, CPAP pressure was going up. So it was much lesser in high leak group, because the high leak, the pressure generated was much lower compared to the low leak group. The data for the PCO2. So if you look at here, very important slide. So as the flow was increased, the CPAP went up. Initially, there was a good washout of CO2, and after some time, further increasing in pressure was increasing the CO2 retention. So this is what is optimal CPAP. Even while ventilating babies or when we connect CPAP, we have to find out the optimal CPAP for each babies, because that will be the best result. So if you give too much of CPAP also, it may cause harm. If you give too little also, it will cause harm. Optimal CPAP is what is important. Whereas in HFNC, that difference was not seen. The CO2 is directly proportional to the flow. In a low leak, the CO2 was coming down more gradually compared to the high leak. Because the high leak, there was a significant washout of CO2 very fast, and the CO2 started coming down very quickly in high leak piglets, whereas in low leak it gradually. But as the flow increased, the advantages are gone. So if you want both CO2 to be washed off and a better oxygenation, probably you can have a low leak with higher flow. Effects of incremental increase in flow on PO2. Even PO2 had a similar response. Initially, there was a good increment, that is improving oxygenation as the pressure was built, and then further increasing in CPAP actually reduced the oxygenation due to various issues which we know. Whereas in low leak, as the flow was increased, there is a progressive improvement in the FiO2 or PaO2. Because this study was only up to 8 liters, they were not studied beyond this, but up to 8 liters, there is a progressive improvement. Whereas in a single prong that is high leak, there is initial improvement of the oxygenation and then it's stabilized. So double prong or low leak is better for oxygenation. So conclusion with this study, HFNC improves gas exchange in a flow dependent manner. A double prong had a greater impact on improving oxygen. Single prong had a greater impact on CO2 elimination. And if you want a better oxygen and a better CO2 elimination, increase the flow with a low leak. That may help. As per this study, HFNC is almost equal to CPAP or probably better, but again with controversies. But this study is a small study. That is the main limitation of this. Why is HFNC used so much? Because of the comfort mainly. As I mentioned earlier, it is comfortable for everyone, minimizes the damage. Now a bit about the humidity and the oxygen, last few slides. Humidity is very important aspects of ventilation. Without humidity, you should not be ventilating any baby, and you should not be giving non-invasive ventilation without humidity, because it is going to cause significant damage to the delicate epithelium and the alveoli. So what is absolute humidity? Is the amount of water vapor per liter of gas measured as milligram per liter, and relative humidity is measure of how much water vapor is in the gas compared to the maximum capacity to hold. This is very important for managing CPAP. That's why I put up these slides. So if you look at what is the difference. So in this at 30 degrees centigrade, if you have 15 milligrams per liter of absolute humidity, this is 50% relative humidity, because this air can hold more water. But when you go up to 30 milligrams per liter of absolute humidity, this at 30 degrees gives 100% relative humidity. So as the temperature increases, the amount of air, the amount of water vapor the air can hold goes up. As the temperature drops, the amount of water it can hold significantly comes down. So warming the gas increases its maximum capacity to hold water vapor, and cooling the gas reduces its capacity to hold the vapor. So this is what is dew point. We see regularly. So daytime, the temperature is high, it takes up more water if there is water in the atmosphere. And nighttime, when it starts cooling, it can't hold up all the water because the temperatures drop. Therefore, it forms a dew point. And this is what we see early morning when we walk around. A lot of dew points in these gardens and leaves. So gas is fully saturated given temperature when it's 100% relative humidity. Any decrease in temperature, water vapor is lost as condensation. This is what is important while managing CPAP, which I'll tell you later. So here, this is the condensation point. Here, this is an excellent device. A lot of research has been taken care here. When you heat this here, the incoming gas is heated here. Water vapor is here in this chamber. Therefore, the air takes up maximum amount of water vapor. So at 37 degrees centigrade, it has got the maximum amount of water vapor. And further, when it travels in the inspiratory limb, this is further heated up to 40 degrees by the time it reaches. But there is no further water vapor here. So relative humidity, which was 100%, will decrease at this point to around 70 or 80% because the air has been heated, but there is no enough water. Why this has been done? This is with a purpose. Again, when the air travels from this point to through the interface to the baby, there is a drop in temperature because there is no heated wire here. So this temperature goes back to 37 degrees, and that's where it has got 100% relative humidity, which the nose babies require. So this is the picture showing the different temperature, different areas. So this baby requires 37 degree air with 100% relative humidity. So again, why we should not be using centralized gases, medical gases? The temperature can be generally -20 to +20 degrees centigrade, which is much lower temperature. Babies require 37 degrees centigrade air. The humidity, relative humidity is only 2% in medical gases. Baby's lung requires 100%. And medical gas absolute humidity is only 0.3 milligrams per liter, whereas baby requires 44 milligrams per liter to attain 100% relative humidity. And that is one of the reasons why we should not be using high flow nasal cannula directly from the central lines. So normally in a bigger children or adults, this is what happens. Room air, which is around 22 to 24 degrees centigrade, will be having 35% of relative humidity, gradually goes up, and by the time it reaches lung, it reaches 100% relative humidity. But extreme preterm babies and preterm babies won't have this capacity. So we have to give the required humidity and temperature for these babies. Advantages of this humidity: it reduces the heat and water loss, preserves gas exchange, preserves energy for the growth, improves weight gain, reduces risk of infection, and improves the mucociliary transport system. This is very, very important. This is with adequate humidity, all the cilia are maintained and healthy. And if there is poor humidity, within few hours or few days, this is what happens to the important cilia. So similarly, humidity is very important for functioning of each of these epithelial cells, cilia, aqueous layer, and the gel layer. All is very important. I'm going fast because slides are more. I have last few slides. So if the humidity is less, initially there is the maximum clearance level goes down. As the humidity starts coming down, more and more problems starts happening. Initially the mucus gets thicker, and then further drop in humidity, the clearance level stops. Further drop, the cilia stops functioning. Further drop in humidity, the cell gets damaged and dies. So maintaining humidity in the airways is very important for a proper management of these preterm babies. So how it prevents infection? If you look at the size of the water vapor, they are very tiny. That's only 0.0001 microns. A virus is about 1 to 40 microns. A bacteria is about 0.2 to 10 microns. And water vapor or water droplet is much larger. So this water vapor or droplet can carry both virus and bacteria, whereas this water vapor cannot carry virus or bacteria. Therefore, a humidified air will not generally carry any virus or bacteria along with it, unless the bacteria transfers through the side of the tubings. So it prevents infection significantly. Now, just the last few words on the oxygen use. If you use oxygen without control, all these problems will happen. Oxygen radical disease, retinopathy of prematurity, pulmonary oxygen toxicity, and reduced cerebral blood flow. The same oxygen that makes preterm live can blind or kill the neonate in the end. So be careful when you use 100% oxygen. Why it is important? If you look at healthy fetuses which are growing normally within the uterus, the PaO2 generally is around 20 to 60 millimeter of mercury, averaging around 40 millimeter of mercury. And saturation is around 60 to 90, averaging around 70%. So all organs, premature babies, all organs are programmed to develop in a hypoxic state. And then once the babies are delivered, we try to target 90%, 100%. They are programmed to develop in a much lower saturation. So we have to be very careful in inducing oxytrauma. An example, an infant at 28-week gestation should physiologically have been hypoxic for a further 12 weeks. At birth, such an infant is subjected to the same oxygenation as a full-term baby, and this could be toxic to the developing immature delicate organ. The risk is considerably increased in extreme premature babies, so we have to be careful with use of oxygen, and please follow the target saturation. Learning is a never-ending process. We keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. It was a very elaborate postgraduate clinic which was extremely good. It was such a treat for me to listen to, but the time factor is the one. If I have anybody having any questions in the chat, except that some of the complimentary statements were there that this lecture was very good, excellent lecture. Anybody having any chat across? If it is not, nothing more to say than it was exactly like listening to Dr. Job, a respiratory man, both prenatal and postnatal. Thank you, Dr. Srinivas.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, the TNSC group and the IAP group. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think it was wonderful to have you here with us and to you're very kind of you to moderate